It was supposed to be a quiet evening. Just me, the lake, and the soft hum of the world winding down for the night. My name's Jack. I'm 38, a mechanic by trade, and I've been fishing at Lake Marin since I was a kid. It's a quiet place, too quiet sometimes. The kind of lake that feels like it's been holding its breath for 100 years. Locals joke it's cursed, but I've never been the superstitious type. I came here that night just to get away from the noise of town, from the hum of engines and the endless clatter of tools. The air was cool, thick with that earthy autumn smell. Wet leaves, mud, and the faint sweetness of pine. Mist hovered low over the surface, curling like smoke whenever the wind stirred. The water looked like glass, still and silver beneath the moonlight. I rowed out just far enough that the shore disappeared into the fog behind me. No headlights, no distant voices, just the soft creak of the oars and the rhythmic slap of water against the hull. I dropped anchor near the old willow stump and cast my line. The bait hit the surface with a faint splash, rippling across the reflection of the half-moon. It was peaceful, almost hypnotic, the kind of stillness that makes you forget how alone you are. Minutes passed, maybe hours. I'm not sure anymore. The fog thickened, pressing close around the boat until even the stars seemed to fade. My watch had stopped, just frozen at 8:47. I remember checking it twice, frowning, wondering if the damp air had gotten into the mechanism. That's when I felt the tug. It wasn't the usual gentle pull of a fish. It was sharp, sudden, violent. The rod bent almost double, the line humming with tension. I grinned, bracing my feet against the edge of the boat. "All right, come on," I muttered, reeling it in, expecting to see a good-sized pike or maybe a log, but the thing didn't move. It just sat there beneath the surface, heavy and solid, like I'd hooked the bottom of the lake itself. Then it pulled back. Not just a twitch, an actual yank, hard enough to rock the boat sideways. My breath caught. I tightened my grip, the reel spinning furiously as something down there dragged the line deeper. The water rippled, and for a moment, I thought I saw a shadow moving beneath the surface. "Must be snagged on a branch," I whispered to myself. But even as I said it, I knew I was lying. Branches don't pull. They don't move against you. I leaned forward, trying to see through the fog, and that's when I heard it. A whisper, so faint I thought it was the wind at first. But there was no breeze. The mist was too still, too heavy. The sound came from below, muffled, distorted, like voices bubbling up from deep underwater. I froze, every muscle tight. The whispering grew louder, a chorus of low murmurs twisting together. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was pleading, desperate. The rod jerked again, and something pale broke the surface. At first, I thought it was a fish belly up until I saw the fingers. 5 of them, a human hand, bloated and gray-blue, water dripping from its nails as it reached out of the lake and clutched the fishing line. I dropped the rod. My stomach flipped, and I stumbled back, nearly falling over the bench. The hand tightened its grip, the knuckles creaking as if the thing beneath the water was hauling itself closer. The smell hit me then, a sickly sweet rot, like wet earth mixed with something long dead. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, just stared as the arm followed. Then the top of a head, hair clumped with weeds and algae, eyes clouded white like glass marbles. The body dragged itself up the side of the boat, water sloshing, whispering still echoing from below. "Jesus Christ," I muttered, grabbing the oar. My hand shook so bad I almost dropped it. The boat rocked violently as the thing climbed higher. Its face, if you could call it that, was barely human anymore. Skin peeling, mouth gaping open like it was trying to speak. But the only sound was that whispering, louder now, swirling around me in all directions. It wasn't coming from one voice. It was dozens, maybe hundreds. I swung the oar, hitting it square across the skull. The thing made no sound, no flinch, just sank back into the black water with a heavy splash. Silence. The fog around me seemed to pulse, the air turning colder, heavier. I grabbed the flashlight from my tackle box, flicked it on, and aimed it at the water. The beam barely cut through the mist. The surface rippled gently, but nothing else. No body, no bubbles. For a moment, I almost convinced myself I imagined it. A trick of light, exhaustion, whatever. I started pulling the anchor, ready to leave. But when I reached down, my fingers brushed something wet, something soft. I froze. Slowly, I lifted my hand. There, tangled around the anchor rope, was a strip of fabric. Not just any fabric, part of a flannel shirt sleeve, red and black, exactly like the one I was wearing. My chest tightened. I stared at it, my breath clouding in the cold air. The water beside the boat began to churn, small bubbles rising to the surface. Then another hand appeared, followed by a second, then another, clawing at the edge of the boat. Pale faces emerged one by one, all bloated, all eyeless, their mouths opening and closing as the whispers filled the air like wind through dead leaves. I tried to row, but the oars wouldn't move. Something heavy dragged against the hull from beneath. The wood creaked. My flashlight flickered and died. I screamed, at least I think I did. The sound barely reached my own ears over the water's roar. Hands grabbed at me from every side, cold and slimy, pulling, tugging me down. I kicked, thrashed, but it was like fighting the current itself. The fog swallowed everything, the sky, the moon, the world. And then, nothing. When I opened my eyes, I was still on the lake. Or at least I thought I was. The boat was gone. The mist was thicker, glowing faintly with a dull green light from beneath the water. I was floating, weightless, soundless. The whispering was inside my head now, words forming clearly for the first time. Join us! I screamed again, or tried to. Water filled my mouth, cold and metallic. My lungs burned. The light below grew brighter, shapes moving within it. Faces, arms, an entire crowd of the drowned, waiting. The last thing I remember was a hand reaching toward me. My own hand, pale and swollen, mirroring my movement perfectly before the world went black. They found my boat the next morning, drifting near the reeds. The fishing rod was still there, the hook baited but untouched. No one ever found me. But sometimes, when the fog rolls in thick over Lake Marin, people say they hear whispering from the water. And if you listen long enough, you'll hear me whisper back. I've always hated silence. Maybe that's why I agreed to go night fishing with Adam that night. Anything to drown out the quiet of my apartment. We'd both been restless lately, exhausted from work, from life. The idea of sitting under an old railway bridge by the river, listening to nothing but water and the hum of insects, sounded like peace. We left just after dusk, the air heavy with the smell of wet earth and fallen leaves. The old bridge loomed ahead like a skeleton, its iron ribs cutting through the fog. Nobody used the tracks anymore, not since the derailment 15 years back. The wreck had taken 12 lives, including the engineer, and the town never bothered to rebuild. Locals called it the Ghost Line, half-jokingly, but the name stuck. We parked the truck near the embankment, dragging our small aluminum boat down through the weeds. The metal scraped against stones, a shrill sound that echoed under the bridge. The air was colder by the water, damp enough that my breath came out in pale wisps. "You hear that?" Adam said as we pushed off. I paused, or halfway in the water. At first, I thought it was the wind, but it wasn't. It was lower, steadier. A faint humming sound, like a faraway generator or a train idling in a tunnel. It came from beneath the surface, vibrating faintly through the boat's hull. "Probably the current," I said, though my voice didn't sound convincing. Adam grinned. "Or the ghost line," he teased. "Bet it's the souls of the passengers still running their last route." "Yeah, sure," I muttered, but I couldn't shake the unease that crawled up my spine. We drifted beneath the bridge, the wooden beams towering above us like the ribs of a great beast. Our lantern cast a trembling circle of light across the black water. The hum deepened as we moved toward the center, a strange, resonant sound that seemed to pulse in time with my heartbeat. The longer we sat there, the more it felt alive. It wasn't just sound, it was vibration. I could feel it in my chest, in the wood beneath my palms, in the air itself. We cast our lines and tried to ignore it. The surface was mirror still except for the faint ripples around the boat. Minutes passed. Neither of us spoke. Then Adam chuckled softly. "You ever notice how it sounds like it's getting closer?" He was right. The hum wasn't constant anymore. It was swelling and fading, like it was moving through the water, circling us. I tightened my grip on the rod, pretending to adjust my line just so I wouldn't have to look at him. "Maybe we're sitting on some kind of vent," I said. "Underground pipe or—" The sound shifted. It wasn't a hum anymore. It was a note, low and human, like a voice humming through clenched teeth. "Jesus," Adam whispered. We both leaned over the edge, peering into the blackness. The lantern light barely reached a few feet below the surface, but I could see bubbles rising, slow at first, then faster. The water churned. "Something's under us," I said, backing away. Adam laughed nervously. "Probably a fish." "No fish hums like that." He leaned closer, squinting. "I just want to see." The water broke with a soft glug, and something pale emerged. A face. It took a second for my brain to understand what I was seeing. The features were warped, the skin half melted like wax left near a flame. One eye socket was an empty black hole. The other bulged, white and film-covered. Its mouth hung open, and the hum was coming from there, low, steady, unbroken. Adam jerked back so fast he nearly fell over. The boat rocked violently, water slapping the sides. "Jesus Christ!" I shouted. The thing's head tilted, its lips trembling like it was trying to form words. Then, as if the sound had grown too heavy for the air, the hum deepened, vibrating through my ribs, my teeth, the metal of the boat itself. Adam was shouting something, but I couldn't hear him. The sound swallowed everything. The river seemed to pulse with it, waves shivering outward. I tried to grab the oar, but my hands felt numb, my fingers buzzing as though electricity was running through them. Then the humming stopped. The silence afterward was worse. We sat there gasping, listening to the faint creak of the bridge above. My ears rang, the echo of that vibration still thrumming inside my skull. "Let's go," I said. "Now." Adam nodded, fumbling for the lantern. But before we could move, the sound started again, this time softer, higher. It was behind us. I turned. The water was smooth, empty until it wasn't. Dozens of small bubbles broke the surface in a wide circle around the boat. The hum rose, a dissonant harmony now, like several voices trying to match pitch but failing. I could see faint shapes in the water, twisting beneath the surface. "Row!" I yelled. Adam grabbed one, or I grabbed the other, and we started pulling like mad. The boat scraped against something solid, something underneath. I looked down. A pale arm brushed against the hull. Then another. They were rising, faces, torsos, all warped and melted. Their mouths open in that same humming chorus. Their eyes glowed faintly, sickly white, as if catching some unseen light below. I don't know when Adam fell in. One moment he was rowing beside me. The next the boat lurched and he was gone with a splash. "Adam!" I screamed. I shone the lantern over the water, but the surface had already gone still. The humming shifted again, slower now. And then, God help me, it started saying my name. Not shouting, not whispering, singing it. "Jack, Jack." I froze. My throat tightened, my body shaking so hard the boat rocked beneath me. "Adam, get out!" I yelled, but there was no answer. Just my name, over and over, stretching through that awful hum. The sound surrounded me, inside me, coming from everywhere at once. Something bumped the boat, hard enough to knock the lantern overboard. The flame hissed out, and the world went black. I don't remember rowing back. I don't remember climbing out of the water. The next thing I knew, I was stumbling up the embankment, gasping, soaked to the bone. The humming followed me all the way to the truck, faint but constant. When I came back with the sheriff and a rescue crew an hour later, the river was silent again. The boat was overturned near the center, the oars floating beside it. No sign of Adam, but the sheriff said something that still makes my skin crawl. He said when they found the boat, the metal was warm, like it had been sitting over an engine. I still hear it sometimes, at night when the house goes quiet. that low vibration seeping through the walls. Starts as a hum, then slowly, softly, it forms my name. And every time it does, I swear it sounds closer. My name's George Mallory. I spent 42 years at sea. Trawling, hauling, fixing nets, swearing at storms. You live long enough on the water, you start to think you've seen everything it can throw at you. I used to think that. I don't anymore. When I retired, I promised myself I'd keep fishing, but only for the joy of it. No deadlines, no bosses, no aching back from hauling nets for 12 hours straight. Just me, a rod, and the open water. The sea has a way of clearing your head. Or it used to. That last trip started calm. The kind of morning that makes you believe the ocean forgives. The horizon was a clean line of silver. The air sharp with salt and the faint smell of diesel from the boat's engine. I'd gone out with a small charter crew, 4 of us in total. Just old hands chasing one more good story before heading home to our porches and half-empty whiskey bottles. We anchored 30 miles off the coast of Maine. The sea was like glass that day. No swell, no wind. Just a steady calm that felt almost wrong. I remember saying so. The others laughed it off, cracking open beers and setting up their rods. But under the sun, the water looked too still, too thick, as if something alive was holding it down. By noon, I hadn't caught a thing. The radio hissed static, gulls circled in the distance, but otherwise, the world was quiet. I started thinking about heading in early when I felt the first tug. It wasn't gentle. The rod jerked down so hard I nearly lost grip. "Got something!" I shouted. The others turned, watching as the line went taut, tighter than I'd ever seen. The rod bent, whining under the strain. I braced my boots against the deck, arms trembling as I reeled in, inch by inch. "Whatever it is, it's massive," someone muttered. The reel screamed as the thing below pulled back, nearly yanking me off my feet. I could feel it through the line, not just weight, but movement. Pulse deliberate, steady. Then the smell hit. At first, I thought one of the bait buckets had turned. But it was worse than rot. It was heavy and sweet, like meat left too long in the sun mixed with the metallic tang of salt water and blood. The others started coughing, covering their noses. "Jesus, George, what the hell is that?" I didn't answer. Couldn't. Because just then, I heard something else. Laughter. Faint, high-pitched. The sound of a little girl giggling underwater. The line trembled as if plucked by tiny fingers. "Cut it," someone said behind me. "Whatever it is, cut the damn line." But I didn't. I don't know why. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was curiosity. Or maybe, deep down, I just didn't believe what I was hearing. The laughter faded into soft humming, like a lullaby distorted by the sea. And then, the water ahead of me rippled. At first, I thought it was just a fish. But as it rose, the shape beneath the surface became clear. Pale arms, thin hair drifting like seaweed. A small face staring up through the water. When she broke the surface, every sound on the boat stopped. She was a child, maybe 8 or 9, her skin waterlogged and gray-blue, eyes wide open and glassy. A rusted fishhook was lodged through her left cheek. The line from my rod still threaded through it. Seaweed hung from her hair like ribbons, and when she smiled, her lips split like paper. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The others shouted for me to back away, but I just stood there, frozen. Then she giggled again, the same soft, cheerful sound, and her hand twitched. The line jerked. The next thing I knew, she lunged. It wasn't fast. It wasn't violent. It was like watching something float upward in slow motion. Silent, graceful, wrong. The line snapped tight as she hit the side of the boat, water spraying across my face. Her hand clamped onto my wrist. Cold. So cold I swear it burned. "George!" someone screamed, but I didn't hear them anymore. The humming was back, low and steady, echoing in my skull. The smell of rot filled my lungs as her head tilted, her dead eyes locked on mine. The hook in her cheek glistened as she smiled wider, her teeth small and sharp as broken shells. Then she pulled. I remember the shock of the water, how heavy and freezing it was. The world went black. The last thing I saw before the surface closed over me was the sunlight bending above, like a dying flame. I tried to swim up, but she was stronger than she looked. Her hand stayed locked around my wrist, dragging me deeper. Her hair floated around us in a halo of brown and green. The humming was everywhere now. Not just in my ears, but inside my head, vibrating through my skull, through my bones. Shapes moved below us. More of them. Faces pale and bloated. Eyes open, mouths forming silent words. Each one with a rusted hook somewhere on their body, cheek, hand, throat. I think I screamed, but it came out as bubbles. She smiled again, bubbles spilling from the corner of her mouth. Her eyes weren't empty anymore. They were alive, watching. Something pulled me upward then. A rope around my waist, maybe, or hands from above. The girl's grip slipped as I broke the surface, choking on salt water and air. I was hauled over the rail, coughing, gasping, shivering so hard I could barely speak. The others stood staring at the water, faces pale. She let go. One of them whispered. The sea was calm again. Not a ripple, not a sound. Then came the smell, faint but still there, followed by the smallest sound. A laugh. We started the engine and left. No one spoke the whole way back. When we docked, the harbor lights flickered. The deck smelled like rust and seaweed. I told the others I was fine, but when I looked down at my wrist, there was a thin red mark, circular, like something had wrapped around it. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face beneath the water, smiling, the hook glinting in the dark. The humming came again, faint and low, seeping through the walls of my house as if the sea itself were breathing against my window. I've stopped fishing since then, sold the boat, but I still hear it sometimes, that soft, childish hum, somewhere beyond the sound of the tide. And when I do, I smell the sea again, salt, rust, and the faint, sweet rot of something waiting just below the surface. Sometimes, late at night, I dream I'm holding the rod again. The line is tight, the water still, and from below something starts to pull. I grew up in Marin Bay, the kind of seaside town that only looks charming in postcards. In reality, it smells like diesel, salt, and fish guts. The waves are always angry. The gulls scream like they're dying, and the wind carries whispers from the sea at night. I've lived here all my life, and I've heard every ghost story the fishermen tell to scare off tourists. But there's one they never joke about, the lantern by the pier. Every Halloween, when the tide turns just past midnight, people say a lantern appears at the far end of the old pier. A dim, yellow glow swaying in the mist. Some say it's just the wind. Others say it's the spirit of a fisherman who drowned trying to save his son 50 years ago. He never found the boy, they say, and so he keeps fishing, waiting for him to come home. I used to laugh it off. But last Halloween, I stopped laughing. My name's Mason. I was 17 then, too young to know fear, too stubborn to believe in ghosts. My friends had all gone to a party, but I stayed behind, partly because I didn't fit in and partly because I wanted to see it for myself. The night was thick with fog, the kind that swallows sound. I remember the way my breath came out in slow, visible puffs, the air heavy with salt and rot. The tide was low, and the black waves lapped quietly against the wooden pilings. The pier creaked under my boots as I walked. It was old, older than anyone still alive in town. The boards were warped and slick with algae, the railings eaten through by rust. Every few steps, I'd hear the splash of something unseen below. Then, far at the edge of the pier, through the gray fog, I saw it. A faint golden light swaying back and forth. The lantern. For a moment, I froze. The stories came rushing back. About the fishermen who lured people in. About the missing kids whose shoes were found at the pier but never their bodies. My pulse thudded in my ears. I almost turned back. Almost. But curiosity does strange things to you. It makes fear sound like an invitation. As I walked closer, the light grew brighter, cutting through the mist in soft circles. That's when I saw him. An old man sitting at the end of the pier, a fishing rod in hand, his back turned toward me. The lantern hung beside him, flickering gently. He looked solid. Not like a ghost. I stopped a few feet away. "Sir," I called out. The old man didn't move at first, then slowly turned his head toward me. His face was shadowed by the brim of his hat. "Evenin'," he said, voice low and rough like gravel. "Sorry, I didn't mean to bother you," I said. I saw your lantern." He nodded, turning back toward the black water. "He always bites tonight," he said softly. I frowned. "Who?" "My boy," he murmured. "Always comes back hungry." I thought it was some local being dramatic, an old fisherman keeping the legend alive. I chuckled awkwardly. "That's a good one. You're really dedicated to the story." He didn't answer, just reeled in his lines slowly, the reel clicking softly in the fog. Then he reached into a small tin and held something out to me. "Here," he said. "Try this bait. Works better." It looked like raw meat, slick and pink, but something about the smell made my stomach turn. A sweet, metallic scent, like blood gone sour. I hesitated. No thanks. I'm not fishing." The old man tilted his head slightly, and for a split second, the lantern light flickered, and so did his face. The shadows shifted wrong, and in that flicker, I saw them, hollow sockets where eyes should have been, seawater dripping from them, running down leathery skin. His mouth hung open in something like a grin, teeth dark and chipped, black water spilling from between them. When the light steadied again, his face was normal. The hat, the wrinkles, the dull eyes. But my body knew what I'd seen. Every nerve screamed at me to run. I stepped back. I should go." He didn't stop me, just said, "He'll bite soon. Maybe you'll stay to see." The words crawled under my skin. I turned and started walking back. The pier groaned with every step, the mist pressing in thicker than before. Halfway down, I heard the reel again. Fast, urgent, like something massive had taken the bait. Then came a sound that froze me in place. Laughter, not deep or human. High, childlike, echoing faintly over the water. I turned. The old man was standing now, his silhouette dark against the fog. The line in his hands trembled violently, pulling toward the sea. He leaned back, straining, whispering something I couldn't hear. Then splash. Something huge broke the surface, sending a spray of water into the air. For a heartbeat, I saw it. Small, pale hands reaching up from the waves, grasping at the line. A child's hands. The old man laughed, the same low, guttural tone that didn't sound quite human. Then both of them, the man and the thing in the water, vanished as the lantern light exploded in a blinding flash. I stumbled back, shielding my eyes. When the light dimmed, the pier was empty. The line, the man, the sound gone. Only the lantern remained, still burning softly, its reflection rippling in the water below. I ran. I don't even remember how I got home. My clothes were damp, my hands shaking so bad I dropped my keys twice. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that flicker. Those hollow sockets dripping seawater, that awful grin. The next morning, the whole town buzzed with news. Someone found a tackle box on the pier mine. I didn't even realize I'd dropped it. And beside it, at the very end of the pier, hung 2 lanterns, both burning. No one believed me when I said what I saw. My friends joked that I'd just gotten scared of fog. But when night falls, I can still hear the creak of that pier, and sometimes, just before I drift off, I hear the faint sound of a reel spinning and a child laughing beneath it. I haven't gone near the water since, but last Halloween, from my window overlooking the bay, I saw something glowing far out past the shore. 2 small lanterns swaying side by side, and this year there were 3. My name's Mason Carter, and if anyone ever tells you that the stories about the lantern by the pier are just small-town Halloween legends, don't believe them. I grew up in Narration, a sleepy coastal town with more ghosts in its stories than people in its streets. Every October, the air carried that thick, briny chill that seeps into your clothes no matter how many layers you wear. By the time Halloween rolled around, the fog would roll in from the ocean, blanketing everything in a dull gray haze. That's when the stories began again about the lantern. They said an old fisherman named Elias Moore had lost his only son to the sea one stormy night. The boy had gone out to help pull in the nets and never came back. For years afterward, Elias went to that same pier every night, swinging a lantern over the waves, calling his boy's name. One evening, he just didn't come home. Some said he slipped. Others whispered he saw his boy's face in the water and followed. Now, every Halloween night, people claim they see a light out there at the end of the pier. A single lantern swaying in the mist. I never believed it. That Halloween, I was 17, bored, and looking to prove something. The town's usual festivities, cheap costumes, pumpkin carving, the annual bonfire, didn't interest me. I wanted something real. Something that would make my blood pump harder than candy and cider. So, when my buddy Chris dared me to go see the lantern for myself, I didn't hesitate. It was around 11:30 p.m. when I left my house. The air was wet and cold enough to sting my face. My breath came out in small clouds as I walked toward the shoreline. The streets were dead quiet, just the sound of my shoes crunching on gravel and the distant crash of waves against rocks. The pier was about a mile out, past the last row of houses. It stretched into the black water like a long skeletal arm. The wood was old and warped, and every step creaked under my boots. I could smell the salt and rot, the kind of sour, wetwood smell that sticks to your skin. First, I saw nothing, just fog and the dark swell of the tide below. Then, I saw it, a soft glow in the distance, faint but steady. A lantern hanging near the edge of the pier. It swayed slightly, though there wasn't any wind. My heart started to hammer. I told myself it was a trick, someone messing around, maybe Chris trying to spook me. Still, I kept walking. Each creak of the planks felt louder than the last, echoing into the mist. As I got closer, the light grew stronger, revealing the silhouette of a man sitting at the very end of the pier. He had a fishing rod in one hand, line cast into the dark water. The lantern hung beside him, the glow illuminating his shoulders, his worn-out jacket, and a cap pulled low over his face. "Evenin'," I said, forcing a nervous laugh. Didn't think anyone else would be out here. The man didn't move, didn't even look at me. "Nice night for fishing?" I tried again. His voice came low and gravelly, like the sound of a rope dragging through sand. "He always bites tonight." I frowned. "Who does?" The man slowly turned his head toward me. The lantern's light flickered just for a second, but it was enough to make me step back. His skin looked pale, almost translucent like stretched wax. Water dripped from his chin, soaking into his collar. "Want to help?" he said, his hand extended, offering me a small tin of bait. It smelled like rot and salt and something worse. Sweet, metallic, like blood that had been sitting in the sun. My stomach twisted. "No thanks. I was just checking out the light." "People said," he interrupted, voice cutting through the fog. "You hear him sometimes, crying for me from below. That's why I wait." I looked around, expecting to see someone else, but the pier was empty behind me. Just the dark shore and the faint outline of the town lights far away. I wanted to turn back. Every instinct screamed at me to go, but my legs didn't move. It was like the air around me had thickened, holding me in place. Then I heard it, a faint hum coming from the water below. Low and steady, almost like someone was humming a lullaby. The man's fishing line twitched. He leaned forward, eyes fixed on the surface. "There," he whispered. The humming grew louder, vibrating through the planks under my feet. The water below began to ripple, small bubbles rising to the surface. The man's line went taut, bending his rod sharply. "He's here," the old man said. The sound rose to a fever pitch, filling my skull, making my teeth ache. I clutched my ears, trying to block it out, but it was inside me, inside my bones. Then the water broke. Something pale and small surged upward, a shape that looked almost human. A child's face, bloated and gray, eyes open wide. Its mouth moved, but instead of words, that humming poured out louder than before. The man dropped his rod and reached for the child, calling a name I couldn't make out. I stumbled backward, tripping over a loose plank. The lantern flared suddenly, casting harsh yellow light over both of them. The child's face twisted, smiling, if you could call it that. Its skin was torn around the mouth, and seawater poured from the corners of its lips. The man turned toward me again, and this time I saw his face clearly. His eyes were gone, just hollow sockets leaking seawater that streamed down his cheeks. The lantern light flickered through him like smoke. I ran. I didn't look back, not even when I heard the splash behind me or the creak of footsteps following along the pier. The fog swallowed everything, the light, the sound, even my own gasps. By the time I reached the shore, the only thing I could hear was the steady rhythm of waves crashing against the rocks. I didn't stop running until I got home. The next morning, they found my tackle box at the end of the pier. I swear I never brought it with me. My name was carved into the wood, something I hadn't done. That night, when I looked out my window, I could see the pier through the fog. The lantern was burning again. Only this time it wasn't at the edge. It was halfway down the pier, right where I'd been standing. And for just a second, I thought I saw another light beside it, smaller, dimmer, like a new lantern, freshly lit. My name's Owen Keller, and I used to live in a town called Gulls Hollow, a fog-choked stretch of coast where everyone knew everyone, and everyone knew not to go near the docks after dark. They said the sea was cursed there, that it took what it wanted. But back then, I didn't believe in curses. I believed in things I could touch: nets, salt, fish, and money. I worked on a small boat with my uncle, hauling crab pots and baiting lines for cod. The work was hard and filthy, but it paid enough to keep gas in the truck and beer in the fridge. Uncle Ray had been doing it for decades. People said he knew the sea better than his own family. He used to joke that the ocean had a taste for the living, that if you didn't respect it, it'd remember your scent. I laughed at him. Back then, I laughed a lot. That changed the night of the storm. It was late October, just before Halloween, and the wind had started to turn sharp. The water was darker that night, slick like oil. The moon barely showed through the rolling clouds, and the air stank of rain and brine. We'd been out longer than we should have, chasing one last catch before the weather hit. Ray dropped anchor near the old pier, the one no one used anymore since the collapse a few years back. He said fish gathered near the wrecks. When I checked the bait bucket, I noticed something strange. The smell wasn't right, not the usual rank of old fish guts and blood. It was sweeter, heavier, like iron. "What the hell's this, Ray?" I asked, leaning over the side. He didn't answer right away. He was fiddling with the line, his hands shaking slightly. "It's good bait," he muttered. "Don't ask too many questions." I thought he was joking, but when I reached into the bucket to pull out a chunk, my hand brushed against something soft. Too soft. Like skin. I jerked my hand back. "Ray, that's not. Bait's bait," he snapped. "You want to eat or not?" That was the first time I noticed his eyes. They had this glazed, sunken look, like he hadn't slept in days. His beard was wet and matted, and there was something under his nails. Dark red, caked deep. The wind picked up, tossing the boat. Somewhere beneath us, the water rippled with movement. Ray grinned and tossed a hook into the sea. "She's hungry tonight," he said. "She?" I asked. "The sea," he said softly. "You just gotta feed her right." A few minutes later, the line went taut. The rod bent so hard it nearly snapped. Ray's face twisted with excitement. "Hold her steady," he shouted. "She's biting." But the sound that came from the water wasn't right. It wasn't the splash of a fish or the thrash of something with fins. It was a moan. Muffled, bubbling, human. My stomach dropped. "Ray, cut the line," I shouted. He just stared into the dark, whispering something under his breath. A prayer, maybe. Then he yanked the rod back, and something broke the surface. First, I thought it was seaweed. Long strands of it tangled around the line, glistening in the lantern light. But then I saw fingers. Pale, slim fingers clutching the hook, blood blooming in the water around them. The hand twitched. I screamed. Ray didn't move. His face was lit up in that orange glow, eyes wide, pupils tiny. "She's come back," he murmured. "She always comes back hungry." The figure surfaced fully, a girl or what was left of her. Her skin was torn, gray-blue, chunks missing like something had gnawed at her. Hooks were buried deep into her shoulders and spine, glinting under the lantern light. Her hair floated around her head like black seaweed, and her mouth moved soundlessly, bubbles pouring out. Then somehow she spoke. "He feeds the sea," she whispered, voice wet and gargled. "He feeds her with us." That's when Ray lunged at me. He shoved me backward, his hands cold and slick, reeking of salt and blood. "You don't get to leave," he hissed. "You're part of it now." I scrambled, kicking over the bucket. The contents spilled across the deck. Pieces of something unmistakably human. A child's hand. A small, pink shoe tangled in fishing line. Ray grabbed the line and started pulling again. The girl's body hit the side of the boat with a sickening thud, eyes staring up at me, unblinking. I ran for the bow, shouting, "You're insane." He laughed. "No, boy. I'm devoted." Lightning split the sky, illuminating his face for an instant, and what I saw wasn't entirely him anymore. His eyes were milky, veins dark and pulsing under his skin. Water leaked from his mouth as he smiled. "You feed her," he said, "or she takes you." He lunged again, and I swung the lantern into his face. The glass shattered, flames flaring across his beard and coat. He screamed, stumbling backward, and the boat rocked violently. I don't remember falling, just the cold shock of the ocean swallowing me. I must have hit my head, because when I woke, I was lying on the rocky shore. My body felt torn apart. Every breath burned. My skin stung where salt had entered open wounds. When I rolled over, I saw the boat drifting near the pier, upside down, smoldering. No sign of Ray. The tide washed something up beside me, his hat, and next to it a metal bucket. It was still sloshing. When I looked inside, there was nothing but black water and a faint sound, like breathing. Slow, steady, from deep below. The police found me the next morning. They said I was lucky to be alive. I told them everything, but they didn't believe me. They said Ray must have gone overboard in the storm, that I was delirious from exposure. A week later, a diver went down to recover what they could from the wreck. He didn't come back up for a long time. When he did, he was shaking. He refused to go back down again. Said there was something under the pier, an old cage filled with bones. Not fish bones, human ones, and hair tangled in the bars, waving like seaweed in the current. They never found Ray's body. But sometimes, when the wind shifts and the tide's low, people say they can hear it. The clink of hooks against metal, the creak of the pier, and a faint voice whispering over the waves. He feeds the sea. And if you're unlucky enough to walk by the docks at night, you might see a lantern glowing near the edge, and beside it, a bucket still sloshing, as if something inside is still waiting to be fed. I've been fishing these waters for 30 years, long enough to know every creak of the dock, every shift in the tide, and every sound the sea makes when it's angry. My name's Walter Hennings, and I've lived alone on the coast of Maine since my wife passed away 5 winters ago. The ocean's all I've got left. Feeds me, lulls me to sleep, and sometimes I swear it listens when I talk. That night, the one that ruined everything, was colder than usual for late October. The air smelled like salt and rotting kelp, and the fog rolled in thick, smothering the coastline until even my lantern light looked like it was drowning in milk. Halloween night, though I'd forgotten until I saw the calendar pinned to the wall of my cabin. I went out anyway. The sea didn't care about holidays. My little boat, the Lark, rocked in the shallows as I loaded my gear. The water was dead calm, flat as oil. That was the first strange thing. No wind, no sound. Even the gulls were silent. I told myself it was the weather, maybe a pressure drop before a storm. But my gut had that old, gnawing feeling I used to get before something bad happened. By the time I reached the fishing spot, a few miles off the old lighthouse, night had swallowed everything. I cut the motor, dropped anchor, and cast my line. The waves barely rippled. I remember thinking it felt wrong, like I was floating over something that didn't want to be disturbed. Then came the tug. It was soft at first, a gentle pull, like seaweed brushing the hook. Then harder, then violent. The rod bent so sharply I thought it would snap. I braced my boots against the hull and reeled with everything I had. Whatever I'd caught wasn't fighting like a fish. It wasn't thrashing. It was dragging. Slow, purposeful. When it broke the surface, the water didn't splash. It parted. And what I saw shouldn't have existed. The thing was small, maybe the size of a trout, but slick and black as tar. Its scales glistened under the lantern like oil slicks, shimmering in colors that didn't belong to the sea. It writhed and gurgled on the line, and that's when I saw its mouth. Not a fish mouth, a human mouth. Pink lips, yellow, crooked teeth. And as it gasped, it made a sound, a wet, choking whisper. Walter. I dropped the rod. My heart slammed so hard I thought it might burst. The name echoed again, gurgled through that impossible throat. I stumbled back, lantern swinging wildly, casting shadows that twisted across the deck. The thing flopped, twisting toward me, its black eyes rolling like marbles. I told myself I was losing it. Too much whiskey, too little sleep. But curiosity, that cursed fisherman's curiosity, got the better of me. I grabbed a knife from the tackle box, knelt down and slid it open. The stench hit first, metallic and sour, like blood mixed with seaweed rot. Inside, it wasn't flesh. It was something else. Threads, veins, tiny teeth scattered like sand. And deep inside its gut, a lump of something hard bone. I tossed it overboard, gagging, and watched it sink. But the whisper didn't stop. Came from the bucket, the one I'd left beside me for the night's catch. Walter. I kicked it, spilling water across the deck. Empty. But the whispering grew louder, wet and bubbling. From the drain. From the wood. The boat itself began to groan, as if something beneath the hull was dragging its nails across it. That was enough. I started the engine, heading back toward shore. The fog was thicker now, the kind that swallowed light whole. My lantern flickered and died, and all I had was the dull glow of the shoreline in the distance. Every minute, I could swear I heard something slapping against the boat's underside. A wet thud, like a hand. When I finally hit the dock, I didn't tie the boat down. I just ran. My cabin's lantern burned weakly through the mist, and I slammed the door behind me, heart pounding. Inside, the place felt smaller than usual. The smell of the sea clung to everything. I poured myself a drink, shaking so bad I spilled half of it and tried to calm down. But the sound followed me, a faint, sucking drip from the sink, a whispering burble from the drain. My name again and again. Walter. I turned off the faucet. It didn't help. The drain breathed. The walls seemed to thrum, as if water was moving through them. I backed away until I hit the table, and that's when I saw it. The fish, lying right there, on the cutting board. I'd thrown it into the sea, but somehow it had followed me home. Its mouth was open, wider now, and when I looked closer, I saw something inside. My own reflection, rippling across its wet eyes, smiling wrong. Then it spoke again, clearer this time. Feed. The tide. The next part's hazy. I remember grabbing the knife again. I remember shouting, maybe crying. The whispering turned into a chorus. Dozens of voices bubbling up through the walls, the floorboards, the pipes. I swung the knife at the sound, slashing the air, hitting nothing. The lights flickered out. For a long time, all I could hear was the sea outside, roaring now, angry. The air grew damp and cold, droplets forming on my skin. I couldn't tell if it was sweat or seawater. Then something crawled from the drain. Small at first, tendrils of black slime curling across the floor like roots. They pulsed, glistening, and every pulse made that same whisper. Walter. I backed toward the door, but the handle wouldn't turn. It was slick, wet, and when I looked down, the floor was flooding. Salt water rising fast. Floating in it, a dozen little fish, all with human mouths, all whispering my name. The last thing I remember clearly is falling. The water closed over my head, cold enough to burn, and in the blackness below, I saw faces. Dozens of them. Some I recognized, old fishermen, gone missing over the years. They smiled up at me, mouths full of black scales. When I woke, it was daylight. The cabin was dry. The only sound was the gulls. I thought I'd imagined it all, until I saw the trail of wet footprints leading from the sink to my bed. They weren't mine. And when the sheriff came 2 days later, he said he found my boat still anchored offshore. My gear untouched, a half-eaten fish on the table. I don't remember what happened after that. Maybe I never left that cabin. Maybe I'm still down there, beneath the tide, whispering through the pipes. Sometimes, when the wind's just right, I can still hear it. My own voice, gurgling up from the sea. Feed the tide.